BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Maame by Jessica George. Read by me, Claire Hope Asherty. Episode 1. Meet Maame. Or Maddie. Or is it Madeline? In African culture... Wait, no. I don't want to be presumptuous enough to assume certain Ghanaian customs run true in other African countries. I might, in fact, just be speaking of what passes as practice in my family. But regardless of who the Moors belong to, I was raised to keep family matters private. None of my friends, helpfully I don't have many, know that every weekday I start the morning the same way. I wake up 5 minutes before my alarm and wait for it to go off at 6 a.m. I tread silently downstairs, past my dad's bedroom, now relocated to the ground floor, and into the kitchen. I close the door to restrict travelling noise and take a container of lunch from the batch I made on Sunday for myself, then cook pasta for Dad's lunch and leave it covered in the microwave. The rice I make for his dinner goes on a shelf in the cold oven. None of my friends know it's when I'm out of the shower that I hear Dad's carer, Dawood, come in. I cream my skin and tune into a prayer channel Mum likes to randomly quiz me on. I set a reminder to call Dad's GP at lunch for his swollen feet and look through my emails to find that we don't qualify for a council tax reduction. Downstairs, Dawood is in the kitchen making toast, and tomorrow will be porridge because the two meals alternate on weekdays. I walk into the living room and tell Dad, "I'll make you pancakes on Saturday." "Oh, goody," he says, smiling. But he won't remember the pancakes until I feed them to him on Saturday morning. He can remember constant, repetitive things, like mine and Dawood's presence, but short-term details won't sit in his brain for very long. I have a picture of my parents taken in September 1984, and in it Dad is tall and handsome, with an afro and a silver chunky bracelet he still wears to this day. Whenever I look at that photo, I think of my last day at college 8 years ago. My year were having a party thrown in a bar, our equivalent of a prom, I guess. I didn't end up going, even though I was asked. By Charlie, the quiet guy in maths that I had no idea liked me. I did say yes. I bought a dress. But then I had to cancel on the day. Poor Charlie. An hour before I texted him to say I couldn't make it, my dad received his diagnosis. Parkinson's disease. I have an older brother, James. He lives in Putney, so it's just Dad and me here in Croydon. My mum spends most of her time in Ghana, running a hostel that my grandfather left to her and my uncle when he died. She'll come back home for a year, then return to Ghana for a year. Rinse and repeat. I'd lie to my friends and tell them Mum was only gone for a month or 2, 3 tops, because I knew they wouldn't get it. They'd ask, "What about you?" But I was fine. I was raised to be independent, to wash my own clothes, to shop for food and cook my own meals, to do my homework on time. I didn't need to be looked after. I was proud to be so trusted. I didn't know any better. "I'm leaving now, Dad," I say, loud enough for him to hear. "See you in the evening, okay?" His eyes don't focus on me, and they're not quite set on the TV either. But when he hears the word, okay, his eyes widen and he replies, "Okay," and smiles again. I turn to leave and throw, "Love you," over my shoulder. My hand is on the door handle when I hear him shakily say, "I love you too." The 2:50 bus is rounding the corner when I get to the bus stop, and it's already filled with schoolchildren. Per usual, I stand and watch 15 more shove their way on in front of me, jamming the closing doors. I take a picture of a girl's backpack caught between the doors and send it to Nia. Were we ever this annoying? Nia's been my best friend for almost 10 years now, but she's currently doing a business degree in Utah. She'll be back home in the summer, hopefully for good. I Google jobs with the happiest employees. Number 1 on the list is teaching. That's got to be a lie. On a list of jobs that have the unhappiest employees, 1. Customer service. 2. Hospitality. 3. Administration. When Waterloo approaches, I brace myself for another day at a job Google itself has deemed deserving of a bronze medal in the race to unhappiness. As soon as I'm separated from the mass of people, a message from Mum comes through. Just seeing her name reminds me of last night's phone call. "Maddie, can you transfer me some more money, please?" "Hello, Mum. How are you?" She laughs, and it tinkles effervescently. "I don't have any spare cash this month." "Why? Have you been recklessly spending?" "No." Pause. "What's wrong, Maame? You don't sound right. Tell your mother." Mum alternates between calling me one of three things: my name and all its variations included, a term of endearment, or Maame. Maame has many meanings in Tree, but in my case, it means woman. I've been called Maame ever since I can remember, and I loved being referred to as a woman when I was still a girl. I loved being viewed as a grown-up before I'd even gotten my period. But now Maddie! And I can hear the impatience coating the edge of her syllables. When I feel my time to explain is running out, I say, "I'm just sad and I think anxious." Mum sighs. "Maddie, please. You like to complain about this too much. You're not doing a lot really, are you? You should see how the children here live. Don't you relax when you come home from work and on the weekends? It's because you don't ever go out." My eyes begin to water. "I have said you need to go outside more because you'll never find a husband sitting at home," she continues. "Your father doesn't need company during all the sun's hours. That's why you're sad all the time. You have no fun, eh?" I almost tell her that fun doesn't equate to happiness. It lends you happiness, and I want to know how to keep it. I've Googled how to be happy. I've taken walks in the park and written long gratitude lists. I've given out compliments and practiced mindful breathing. I have tried to fix myself. "I think maybe I should go to the GP," I start to say. "No, we don't rely on the GP for things like that," Mum says. "It's not necessary. With God, there is no illness he cannot cure. That's why we rely on him for all things." I quietly ask, "Then why doesn't he give you money?" "He blesses me through you, my daughter," Mum says with finality. I work as a PA for Catherine Fellingham, Director of Marketing and Publicity at the Covent Garden Theatre, and my day mainly consists of rearranging her diary to avoid all the clashes she's added in overnight, managing her expenses, making her cups of Earl Grey tea, then cleaning her mugs in the bathroom sink. I came upon this job through Access All Areas, a social enterprise dedicated to getting more underrepresented young people into London's creative industries. I'd gone for an interview, and whilst the panel were all white, at least they were all women. And on my way in and out, I saw people like me. We were still the minority, but compared to my previous jobs, it was a sizable difference. Weeks in, I realised they were mainly front of house, serving staff. The departments I interacted with were stiflingly white, to the point where in every meeting I took minutes for, I was the only black person in the room. I'd wanted to leave before my probation period was up 7 months ago, which spat in the face of my parents' and grandparents' work ethic. My mum said it was a privilege I had the opportunity to jump from job to, albeit low-paying, job. Maybe the reason Mum struggles to understand me is because she preaches her experience. No one told her she could do anything she wanted. My parents were black immigrants in 80s London. They didn't have time for hobbies or the ability to seek job fulfillment opportunities. I should remember to view things through a similar lens. To remember my dad needs me to have a stable job that allows me to help out with bills and get home in time to feed him dinner and put him to bed 4 evenings a week. If only logic and reason overruled emotion. I call James that evening, but typically he doesn't answer, and instead calls back hours later. I have to turn the light on as he switches on the video camera. I can see he's in his car. "Hey, Mads." He's got plaits in his hair now, and they're long enough to lie down instead of stick up. When he smiles, his gold tooth glints. "Dad asleep?" he asks. "Yes, which is why I called," I tell him. "I could use some help with that. My back hurts from lifting Dad from his seat and into bed. Can you do one of my nights each week, maybe?" James scratches what I know to be a phantom itch on the back of his head. I can't really come all the way from Putney just to put Dad to bed, Mads," he says. "And you know my work schedule is unreliable. It's not fair to promise you a day and then not come because I got to be somewhere else last minute." "Right. Anything else I can help with, though?" he asks. "The council tax bill has come in." He sighs. "Sorry, Mads, I'm a bit short on extra money. But remind me next month, yeah? I wish I was good with money like you." I don't really have much choice. I keep my tone light, but I'm not happy. Not so much at the empty money promises, but because I'm reminded that he can get away with it. If he says he has no money, short of stealing from his wallet, I have to accept that. He knows I'll pay the council tax because I'm living here and can't just sit back as bills pile up. "Just use a bit of your savings and hit me up next month to replace it." "You all right though, yeah?" he asks. "You heard Mum's coming back soon?" "Yes, she told me last week," I say. "She hasn't booked her flight yet." "Let me know when she does. I'm not trying to be around too much when she's here. Shouldn't be too difficult." "Okay." He laughs but doesn't mean it. "You know I don't like the way she moves or acts with Dad. Your husband is here sick, so what are you doing in Ghana all the time? She leaves you to deal with everything." "Something you two have in common." "She's running Grandad's hostel," I say out loud. James presses his lips together and shakes his head. "What?" I ask. "Nothing," he says. "You just don't know Mum like I do, Mads. When I went to Ghana to check up on things, she was moving a bit mad." I look away from the camera. "Yeah," James says. "I can tell you don't want to hear it, and that's why I don't say nothing. Anyway, listen, I gotta go, but I'll come to the house soon, yeah? Bye, Mads." "Bye, James. Love you." "Love you too, sis." I put my phone down and turn off the light. James says he knows Mum better than I do, but I'm the one who saw her phone messages the last time she was here. Messages about missing and loving each other to and from an unsaved number beginning in +233. Maybe that's what James saw in Ghana. I'm glad I had the excuse of looking after Dad to avoid that trip. It's easy to throw a phone back onto a bedside table and pretend as if nothing's changed. Maybe harder if you see it with your own eyes. I think of what Mum may be doing right now, if she's alone. Betraying Dad seems a cool act on her behalf, but I can't think too badly of her. She's still the mum who let me climb into her bed and skip a day of school when I had the scariest of nightmares. It's fine, really. Just another secret to keep.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
In the second episode of Maame by Jessica George, Maddie has lots of surprises, good and bad. There are exciting developments in her personal life and living arrangements, but bad news at work. I head off to church and Shu calls me on the way. Shu and I used to be much closer, but now she has a steady girlfriend, Lydia, and a new high-powered city job. And with Dad needing round-the-clock care these days, I don't see her much. "Glad I got to you before church," Shu says. "I'm about to view another place." Shu moved out of her parents' place as soon as she turned 18. Literally. When she came out to her parents, they said they loved and accepted her. But things weren't the same between them again. Now her tenancy's coming up at her flat in Hornsey, and she doesn't want to renew. She can afford a place on her own, but she'd rather save for a mortgage deposit, and last I checked, Lydia wasn't ready to take the co-resident plunge. "If only you were ready to move out. Then we could find a nice 2-bed place and have a good time." Are you ready to move out or what? I pause outside the church building. A warm, jealous pang hits my chest. I immediately feel guilty and shake my head. It's not Dad's fault, he needs me. I like being at home. I don't think that will change anytime soon, I say. Shu sighs. Fine, fair. Enjoy church. Mum doesn't call until Tuesday, when I'm sat on a bench at the South Bank, facing the river. Darling, have you met someone yet? I mouth the familiar words along with her. Since last week. I roll my eyes. No, I haven't. You're a good girl, Maddie. But staying home all the time to look after your father, it will make you resentful. I don't say anything. Anyway, I called to say that I've booked my ticket and will be home next week. Your uncle wants more time with the hostel. A bit late to help out now. But anyway, I'll be back to stay for a year, possibly more. So now you can move out and live your life a bit. I put my lunch down beside me. Move out? Yes. While I'm watching your father at least. Surely you're thinking about it, eh? Are you going straight home tonight? I get a small kick out of answering. Actually, no, I'm going to a play. On a date? I deflate. No, for work. There's silence before she says, there will be men in the audience. Maybe you'll sit next to one. When she ends the call, I stare out to the river. Mum actually wants me to move out. I never considered she'd want to be home alone and responsible for Dad. I guess me finding a husband and having children before I'm 30 takes precedence. Could I finally move out? My refusal to leave hung on the fact that Dad needed someone, but Mum will be here. I'd have to return when she eventually left again. But while I have the chance, maybe I could get out more. Meet people, meet someone. Finally have an answer to Mum's perpetual question. I download the Rent-A-Room app before returning to the office. Catherine is once again prowling my desk. Have you seen the state of my diary? She explodes at the sight of me. She's red in the face, spittle clinging to her bottom lip. I don't know how to handle this, and no one in the room rushes to my side. So I'm shaking when I wake my computer up and switch onto her diary. It's full of accepted invitations and clashes that weren't there an hour ago. I didn't accept these meetings, I tell her. I did, she says. They've been sitting in my inbox and now there's clashes all over the place and I can't have any clashes. She presses her palms to her eyes. I'm facing her, but I can feel the entire office watching. My heart is pounding when I quietly say, this isn't my fault. Catherine's hands drop from her eyes and she stares at me, her pupils flickering from side to side. Look at my diary, Maddie. This is your job. I turn back to my computer, feeling everyone's eyes still stuck to me. Tonight's play is loosely based on the Salem witch trials. I'm here because staff often get complimentary tickets, and Catherine wants us all to attend when we can, so we're always up to date with CGT's plays. I can rarely make it because performances don't always land on Dawood's nights. During the interval, I head to the second floor to see an exhibition showcasing our costume department's best designs. I slip into the milling crowd and bend over, reading the placard for a floor-length gold-yellow dress made of feathered layers. It's stunning, and I wow audibly. I'll have to let Sophie know you're a fan. I turn to my right where a white man in a suit and dress shoes is looking at me. My pulse quickens because there's no mistaking he's talking to me. He's handsome, with a long face, dark hair and dimples that stretch down to his jaw when he smiles. I'm sorry? My friend Sophie helped design this collection, he says. Really? I look back at the bright dresses. My mind blanks briefly. That's impressive. That's what we tell her, he replies. Did you manage to see this show when it was on? No, I missed it. My night to help out with Dad. But I heard it was highly theatrical. You know, top hats and jazz hands. It really was. I'm Ben, by the way. He holds out his hand. I've been keeping my hands locked so I wouldn't default to wild, nerve-fueled gestures. I unclasp and take his gently. Maddie, I say. Short for Madeline? Yes. A beautiful classic. Oh, fuck. Is that a line? I think it is. Just be cool and say something interesting. I used to hate it. Why? Yes, Maddie, why indeed? Why did I say that to this stranger called Ben? Especially since I don't fully understand why I used to hate my name. Something vague about how I don't quite match it. I am simply not the person you'd expect if you'd only heard the name Madeline Wright. I'd look in the mirror and never felt like it fit, I answer. I get that, he says. I used to hate being called Benjamin. Still do. I grew up with friends named Jared, Brick and Colson. I felt incredibly ordinary. I smile and say, oh, the trials and tribulations of Benjamin Featherstone. I raise an eyebrow and he laughs. Fair enough, he says. Do you have a less pretentious surname? Right, I answer. Madeline Wright. I press my lips together and nod. Circumspect parents, I add. The bell rings for the play's second half. Oh, I have to get back. You're here for the show. I came last night. That's a shame. It is? Is the second half not very good? I meant, with my luck, I would have been sitting right beside you, and now I've missed out. I nod and smile. Yes, that is a shame. He considers me. Or maybe not, he finally says. Perhaps I could take your number? I miss so much of the play's second act because all I can think about is Ben. He asked for my number, and I gave it to him. He said he looked forward to talking to me again. What does that even mean? I'd Google it, but phones during a theatre performance are prohibited. Ben Featherstone. What if he does ask me out on a date? I can't go. What if it's my day with Dad? What happens if it's not and the date goes well? Maybe I shouldn't have given him my number, but it just slipped out. Did I shout them at him? Or relay the numbers in a nonchalant fashion? Why am I so bad at this? Ben doesn't call or text, and I endlessly alternate between relief and disappointment until an actual piece of life-altering news occurs. I think I may have found the perfect flat. With my current salary and atypical lack of a social life, I'm hoping to rent a room in London for a maximum of £800 a month, with bills included. So I spend my free evenings and an entire weekend at viewings until I meet Joe Bowen. Hi Maddie, yes, the room is still available. You'll be living with me and another flatmate called Cam who moved in last week. She works as a primary school teacher's assistant and I work in the charity sector. Are you free to view the room and meet us Sunday afternoon? Kiss. The ground floor maisonette is an old build and the landlady, Winnie, Joe's mum, bought this house in the 70s. The room comes with a double bed, a large wardrobe, wide windows, and a small desk and chair. The rent is more than I hope to pay, but this is the best flat and residence I've found so far. Before Joe, I'd spent an entire day wishing the opportunity to move out had been presented to me earlier. Only a day before my search began, Shu had messaged to say Lydia had agreed to them living together and they were looking for a place for just the two of them. Usually, I'd stand in the corner while I was essentially interviewed by the prospective flatmates. But Jo offers me a cup of tea and a seat on her squashy sofa, and we all talk about work, books and social lives. Theirs far more distinct than mine. I'm still new around here, says Cam, but it's a great area. The commute is easy and there's shops and bars everywhere. My two previous flatmates moved out to move in with their partners. adds Jo. Cam rolls her eyes and says, "Social convention strikes again." On my way home, Jo messages to say that they've decided the room is mine if I want it. It's not my day to give Dad his dinner and medication, but I text Dawood that I will tonight. I lower the fork I was going to offer him. My heart beats gently. "Can I?" I ask quietly. "Can I go, Dad?" He stops chewing and frowns. He's trying to speak, but as usual, right before his meds, his brain won't allow him to form the words that must be on the tip of his tongue. I give him some salad and a play on the TV scores a goal. "I'm not leaving until Mum's back, but you'll hardly notice I'm gone." His face is blank. "I'll be coming to see you lots to check up on you, okay?" He nods. He's closed his eyes, so I put his tray down. I place my hand gently on top of his. I pat it softly, then reach for his evening medicine packet. "Maddie, can we speak for a moment?" I've only stepped through the office doors and almost walked straight into Ellie, my line manager. "An incident arose yesterday when you were off?" I'd booked the day off to spend with Dad, but I don't want to tell them that. "Yesterday morning," she says, "Catherine had an external appointment in her diary. She made it to the supposed location, 2 hours away." I can't even guess where this is going. "It turns out the date of the meeting had changed," she continues. "But you didn't amend her diary? Catherine returned to the office in the afternoon, very out of sorts." I sigh, relieved. There has been a mistake after all. "I didn't put anything into her diary for yesterday morning," I explain. "Did she accept an amended invitation that went directly to her or something?" Ellie looks away. "Maddie, needless to say, Catherine no longer feels you're suited for the role as her PA." I catch my reflection in the window, release the tension in my forehead. "I'm being fired." She clears her throat. "You shouldn't take it personally." I hear Mum before I see her. £45 for a cab," she says. "You are a thief. God will not bless you." I take a deep breath and open the door. "My baby!" She wears black trousers and a loose white top. Her hair used to be longer, but she must have cut it recently, and her growing afro is forming tight coils. Her skin is flawless, as always. She drinks litres of water to keep up with the sun. "Oh, I have missed my baby so much." When she hugs me, I rest my head on her shoulder. She's shorter than me by a couple of inches, but she has strength in her body, so the hug still feels like it's mine. She smells of cocoa butter and faint perfume. "How are you, Mum?" I ask when she lets go. "I'm blessed, my dear. My bags, please." I bring them in and she asks, "How is Wick?" I focus on heaving her suitcase over the threshold.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Here's part 3 of an abridged version of Maame by Jessica George. Maddie has been fired from her job. Her mum is back from Ghana and mustn't find out. But at least Maddie is finally moving out of home. Instead of going to work, I go to the British Library and spend all day there. I've never been unemployed, so don't know what else to do. I find a corner desk, open my laptop, and apply to any and all jobs in publishing. I've done as many as are available before it's even noon. I can't leave for another 4 hours at least, not until the workday is over. And yes, I could tell Mum the reason I'm not going to work is because I have so much holiday saved up due to the fact that I'm such a relentless hard worker. However, then I'd have to be at home. Every time Mum returns, I realise how much I've gotten used to being alone. Now I have to wait outside the bathroom door, fight for kitchen space, have my meals judged and privacy invaded. Being at the library for the majority of the day serves to avoid that. After my first day here, when I managed to apply to all the jobs available within 2 hours, I developed a better routine. I read a book, apply for jobs, then write. Don't roll your eyes, please. I know it seems almost everyone wants to write something, but I used to write a lot at school. I didn't take it further because Mum said a creative writing degree wouldn't give me as many options as an English literature one, and was I sure I didn't want to study law instead? So I left it alone. Now I have free time to fill. Besides, signing up to all the publishing newsletters for job opportunities means I also hear of any writing events they're doing. Caro Books are offering a fiction development programme for underrepresented writers with a deadline weeks away. All I need is a 1,000-word sample of a work in progress. I open a blank document and write about leaving Dad. How I feel guilty and sad, but excited to start living my own life, to find out who I am, and maybe even someone to be with. I write about my life finally starting at age 25, when my peers already have partners they want to marry and stable jobs with a clear trajectory. It reads like a diary entry, and I hit a block after 971 words. I'm saving it on my laptop with my other incomplete works when an email pops up in the corner of my screen. Dear Maddie, thank you for your application for the role of PA to the Publishing Director and Editorial Assistant, Non-Fiction Books at Orange Tree Publishing. We were delighted to receive it and would like to invite you for an interview. Yes! Finally! Today is a successful day. I don't have much to pack because I wear different variations of the same clothes every week. It's strange to see my life in only 2 suitcases. Mum's still asleep when I drag them to the door. I go into the living room and kiss Dad on the forehead. I told him again last night that I was moving out, but maybe it won't register until he doesn't see me tomorrow morning. The Uber is here and my heart starts to pound. Are you doing the right thing? Should you really be leaving home? It's fine. Remember, Dawood's upped his hours. Mum comes down in her dressing gown to kiss and hug me at the door. Her phone vibrates. Be safe, my dear, she says before taking the call upstairs with the bedroom door closed. I've been added to the house group chat, where Jo told me she left my key under the mat. I'm here alone, but I have 2 messages waiting for me as soon as I'm connected to the Wi-Fi. We want to go out for dinner tonight to celebrate you moving in. Kiss, kiss, kiss. So don't cook anything. Before unpacking, I venture around the flat. The utensil drawer gets stuck if pulled out too far. There are blank spaces in the food cupboards and an empty shelf in the fridge. I put the leftovers Mum packed into containers for me in there, and the bright red stands out among the white bread and pale pink wine. Jo's left her bedroom door wide open, and I poke my head around the corner. Her room is marginally bigger than mine. It faces the garden and comes with 2 different desks and a lava lamp I'm tempted to switch on, but don't. What if it won't turn off again? A tower of books sits on the floor beside her bed, and in the corner is a clothing rack of colourful dresses. I think of my own meagre wardrobe. What if we go out and Jo comes out of her room in one of these dresses and I leave mine in jeans and a faded black jumper? I online shop for the rest of the morning, picking things I'd never wear and spending money I usually wouldn't because I can reinvent myself here. Jo and Cam don't know me, and I can be whoever I want to be. So, who do I want to be? Someone cooler, more confident, sophisticated even? Effortless and kind of like, I don't go to things, they come to me, you know? The new Maddie. Drinks alcohol when offered. Always says yes to social events. Has different experiences. Travel? Brunch? Wears makeup. Goes on dates. Is not a virgin. I look at the last 2 items on my list. Ben and I are texting what I imagine are normal getting to know you texts. He works in investment banking, lives in South London. His job is exhausting and his passion is food. Is it weird he hasn't asked me out on a date yet? Dinner out with my flatmates, with the girls. On my way home from work, I used to walk past the West End restaurants and see tables of girls, laughing, talking, eating and drinking. Now that will be me. Joe Public is a small restaurant, and only barstool seats are available inside. But they have a strip of the street enclosed within white picket fences for benches and tables. Joe picks the one in the middle. "Maddie, look!" She points to the chalkboard on the other side of our table. "They're doing 2 for 1 on frozen cocktails. Cam's driving, so should you and I get one?" I'm about to say I don't really drink, but then I remember my list. The new Maddie list. "Sounds good," I tell her. When our drinks arrive, they're pink, served with a straw and a halved strawberry. I take a sip. It's sweet and goes down like semi-frozen honey. I can taste the alcohol, but not very much. I take a longer sip. "Oh my God," Cam says suddenly. "Okay, don't look, but guy in the grey jumper." I act as if I'm scanning the area and look at the bench on our right. The man in the grey jumper looks our age, and he's sat in a group of 6, but has his hand in the red hair of the girl on his left. "What about him?" Joe asks. "His name's Callum, and he ghosted a friend of mine after 3 dates, Cam says. "Are you going to say something?" Joe asks. "No," Cam replies. "Kirsten wouldn't thank me for it. She's talking to someone new now anyway." "Where is she finding all of these eligible, although questionable, men?" Joe asks. Cam pulls a face. "Online." "You're not a fan," I say, curious. "I don't know how you could be," she replies. "With shit algorithms that present you with profiles proudly displaying DTF, it's hard to get excited." I nod supportively, whilst making a mental note to Google DTF. "Cam is a little old-fashioned," Joe mock whispers. "I'm less so." "You can afford to be," Cam says. "You have Sam." "I don't have Sam," Joe corrects. "Who's Sam?" "Just a guy I'm seeing," Joe says, running a finger around the rim of her glass. "It's not serious." "If I ask why, is that intrusive?" "They're just sleeping together," Cam explains. "Is he not boyfriend material?" I ask. Joe gets a faraway look in her eye. "Don't get me wrong. He's gorgeous. Tall, dark and handsome." "Literally," Cam adds. "He's 6'2", black and very good looking." "He's also an artist," Joe continues. "We're part of this big group of friends from uni, and one night, 2 months ago, it just happened. Sometimes he comes by the flat, so you'll meet him eventually." Joe clasps her hands under her chin and smiles to herself. "He's great, but we both don't want anything serious, you know? I'm not ready to be accountable for someone else. And I've started messaging this guy from work. Conrad." "Sam is better," Cam says, and Joe rolls her eyes. "I've only met him twice, to be fair, but he gives great energy." "I'm young," Joe says, waving her hand. "So I'm keeping things casual for now." Casual sex. Friends with benefits, is that still a thing? No feelings allowed or some feelings allowed? Is detached sex possible? Well, I'd need to have sex first to find out. I was offered the job at OTP and started the following Monday. My first few days are nothing but admin. My predecessor left months ago, and the work's been piling up since. Meetings need organising, minutes need taking, my boss Penny's emails need sorting, titles set up and royalties need inputting. If you thought you could escape maths by pursuing a career in books, think again. I did wonder when I'd be able to attend meetings, discuss submissions and work on photographic interiors, but I can't expect too much so soon. Maybe it's something I've got to earn. The following weeks follow a similar pattern. I try to see if I can help with any actual books, but Penny and office admin takes up so much of my day. I'm filing some records when the assistant and commissioning editors head into Penny's office for an impromptu creative meeting. I wonder what they're discussing in there. Penny's door opens. Maddie? I pop out of my seat. Is she going to ask me to join? Can you make me and Thea a tea, please, and bring it in? Ben calls when I'm back at my desk. Hi, Ben. Why are you whispering? Oh, I'm at work. Right, okay. He matches my whisper. Just wondered if you'd like to have dinner Saturday night at my place. Dinner? On Saturday? I haven't been on a date in almost a decade, and the thought makes me want to be sick. Nonsensical to everyone but me. Yes, tomorrow, he says. Ben, why are you whispering? I don't know, he says. It's weird talking aloud with someone who's whispering on the other line. I smile. From the office, I hear Penny ask, Where's Maddie? Okay, dinner Saturday night at your place. Sounds good. Great. I'll text you the address. See you tomorrow, Maddie. Bye, Ben. He laughs, probably because I'm still whispering, before hanging up. As soon as I'm out of the office doors, I pull my phone out. I Google how to prepare for a first date. When I let myself into the flat, my head is buzzing with information and survival tips. Jo ends up picking my outfit. She isn't too impressed with my wardrobe's offerings. Why do you cover up so much? She asks. Is it a religious thing? No, I answer, but then I think about it. Maybe. I guess I did grow up being taught good girls don't. Have any fun, Jo finishes. Said the serpent to Eve, Cam says. Only support and encouragement in this room, please. Cam holds her hands up in surrender and throws herself on my bed. I've never had friends in my room before. I hope it smells okay and isn't too messy. Jo has me try on 4 different outfits. Both she and Cam roll their eyes when I ask them to look away as I change into each one, before settling on a long-sleeved, black and khaki skater dress that just about covers my bum. Jo returns from her room with some black suede thigh-high boots. I can't wear those and this dress, Jo. Why not? Together it's... I motion to the boots. Sexy. Jo considers me. You're going on a date with a rich man. Isn't sexy what you want to go for? I take the boots from Jo. Maybe sexy would be a nice change.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
This is episode 4 of Maame by Jessica George. Maddie starts taking some chances. A dinner date with Ben and the offer of a holiday encourage her to be more assertive at work. As you already know, I love to cook, Ben says. So devising this 3-course menu has been a pleasure. Sounds impressive. You're a real grown-up. Well, I am 34. I sit straight. Really? Ben looks at me. Too old? Yes? No. How should I feel about this? 34 means experience, and so far Ben is proving to have a lot of it. I look around and take in Ben's silver double-door fridge and pantry. I've never been in a kitchen like this. I've never been handed a glass of wine specifically selected for tonight, and the last person to cook for me was my mother. So how old are you? Ben asks. I'm 25. Oh. Great, he says. Would you mind stirring this for just a second? Sure. I put down my wine and lean over to take the wooden spoon for the risotto. Thanks. He then cradles his face with his hands. I laugh but keep stirring. Too young? He takes the spoon back, and I can see his cheeks are pink. 9 years difference is... You're very young, and potentially have more wild oats to sow. I never considered this. Ben is my first proper date in my adult life. Do I expect many more to follow him? How old did you think I was when we met? I knew you were young, he answers. But I couldn't help myself when I saw you, so I hope to push it maybe 28. I blink. You couldn't help yourself? He considers me. Please don't tell me you're one of those women who are obviously beautiful but pretend not to be. I drop my head. No one has ever called me obviously beautiful. Does he mean it? I've been silent for so long that Ben uses his finger to lift my chin. Has no one said that to you before? He asks quietly. I find that hard to believe. He gently strokes my cheek with his thumb, and I finally look at him. I'm breathing heavily, and my chest makes it visible. He smiles slowly and takes my face with both hands, and the warmth of his skin makes me close my eyes. His lips are soft on mine, and my skin tingles. He inhales as I lean deeper in. When we pull away, I tell him, "That was nice, Ben." I'm glad it wasn't just me. He squeezes my thigh. Let's have dinner. At the table, he tops up my wine and pours me a glass of water, before putting our starters on top of what I already thought was my plate. I later Google it to find it's what's called a charger plate, intended to add to the visual effect of your table. The tabbouleh tastes like rice, but lighter and fresher. Ben, this is delicious. He smiles. Do you cook much? When I lived at home with my dad, I'd batch cook on the weekend. Careful, Maddie. I put my wine glass down. You must be the best daughter ever. I try to smile, but there's a sudden burning in my chest because I haven't thought much about Dad this week. I should call, just to check in. Now I've moved out, I'd maybe like to experiment a bit more, especially if the starter is a possible outcome. I hope I don't sound too manic. In that case, Ben leaves the table and pulls out a drawer next to the fridge. Inside are rows of cookery books. He pulls one out titled Simple Dinners and hands it to me before retaking his seat. I start flicking through. It's neat, undemanding, and my kind of cookbook. Ben says, "My gift to you." You're giving this to me? Yes. He looks up. Maybe one day you'll cook me something from it. I smile. Deal. I flip through the book again. You know what the ideal cookbook would be, I say. One that focused on flavour pairings. Lots of books do that. No, I mean just on flavour pairings. Maybe some recipes, but mainly, I don't know, like an index page, and I follow the section on tomatoes, and that chapter tells me what to pair it with and what best brings out its natural flavours. Like, why do fresh tomatoes and mozzarella work so well together? Ben considers this. You'd need to work on your pitch, but that's not a bad idea. Pitch, I repeat. No, I can't pitch the idea. I'm not at that stage. I make tea. Maybe that's how you stop making tea. He winks. I shake my head, but I'm already thinking about it. Ben's right. What harm could it really do? I could even alliterate the title, something like Finding Flavours or Cooking Combinations. It's definitely a work in progress. Ben kisses me again at the end of the night. He orders me a cab home and kisses me on his doorstep until it arrives. He uses his tongue, and because he's slow and gentle, it gives me time to learn how to use mine. I can tell when I'm doing it right because Ben will sigh deeply, and I can feel his heartbeat. It moves hard and fast, and I like that I'm the reason for it. I'm nervously tapping my foot on Tuesday when, during our catch-up, I ask my line manager, Chris, "How was last week's creative?" She shoves her hair back with a headband. "It was shit, actually." "What happened?" "I think we're all in a bit of a creative funk," she says. "We don't have any fresh ideas." "Ideas?" I repeat. "So the team can come up with ideas instead of waiting for agents to bring us their titles." "It's something Penny started when we were all really struggling," Chris answers. "Instead of continuously trying to outbid other publishers, We'd focus on food writers already on our list and come up with exciting things for them to write about. For example, getting Carmen to write about her stay in Italy was Penny's idea. Wow, Carmen Loremo's Sardinia is one of OTP's best sellers. I didn't know that was an option. I write down, what do we want and which of our writers can do it? It's a good idea. It's a good idea when we have good ideas, Chris says. It's not easy getting a book about foreign cuisine from our list of writers who are, well, limited in foreign experience. In other words, homogenous in culture. I nod. Of course. It only worked for Carmen because her husband is from Sardinia, so they travel there a lot. We'll think of something. She closes her notebook. Did you manage to get that list of titles up on MDX? Yes, but actually, I've had an idea about something. I picture my practice paragraph on cooking combos, a book focused on classic and unique pairings, what you can do with them and why. Chris listens patiently, and at the end she says she'll think about it, but well done me for bringing ideas to the table already. I smile at this and, after, print out a list of our authors going back a decade. Like Chris hinted, we have a lot of white, middle-aged men writing about pies, potatoes, and bread. The majority of our female authors specialise in comfort cooking and family meals. I try not to pull a face. On the train ride home, I think about that list. We need something different, a quiet, undiscussed cuisine. We need recipes we wouldn't have thought to try or even search for, but no one on our list seems qualified. I get home and, whilst my pasta boils, I Google the rest of OTP's food writers. On one man's Instagram is a picture of a colourful food spread, nothing like the images of food found in his books. The caption thanks his wife, Afra, whose page I click on. Her account is full of bright dishes, rice topped with seeds, breads bursting with add-ins, and platters of roasted meats. I'm bookmarking her page when Joe rushes into the kitchen. "Where's Cam?" "I'm here," she says, emerging from her bedroom. "What's up?" "You two are going to love me," Joe says. "Cam, I know your school will be on summer holidays, so Maddie, can you take a week of work in August?" "An entire week? I'm not sure. It'll only be my second month." "Why anyway?" Cam asks. "Picture this." Joe stares into the distance. "The warm sun on your skin, afternoon cocktails, summer night barbecues. I'm talking pizza, pasta, gelato, holiday sex, and Italian culture. Yes, in that order." She waves a hand in the air. "Florence," she breathes. "Italy?" "Yes, Maddie, Italy, for an entire week." She takes a deep breath. "A friend of mine, Emma, her parents have a holiday home there and say she can have friends over to stay since they'll be in Greece for the summer." Joe holds up a hand. "I know, yes, she is an incredibly spoilt friend, but that incredibly spoilt friend has said I can bring both of you with me. We just have to pay for the flights." I've always wanted to go to Italy, and travel is on my new Maddie list. I didn't think I'd get to that one before brunch. But even with a free stay, I can't technically afford it. But can you really turn down your first partially free trip to Italy? 1st of August to the 8th. I thought I'd get more excitement out of the two of you. The 1st? The flight out is on my dad's birthday, I tell them. I can't miss it. "What about joining after?" Joe says. "Come a couple of days later, especially if you're nervous about taking that much holiday from work so soon." I suppose I could use my savings. "Fuck it," Cam says. "I'm in." I suddenly nod. "Me too." "Yes!" Joe pulls her MacBook out from her bag, sits at the table and looks up seats available on Emma's flight. "Maddie, we can book yours tomorrow when you've checked in with work, in case they say no, but they won't. They can't." OTP are going with my idea, only no one knows it was my idea. Chris is getting the credit because, according to the minutes of the last creative meeting, instead of cooking combos, she proposed flavour pairings. which is more refined, I suppose. But swapping words for synonyms doesn't make it her idea, does it? Clearly my ideas are good, and there's solace in that, but only a little when no one knows or acknowledges that they're mine. I still don't even get to join creative, of which there are now 2 meetings a week. This would have been the perfect opportunity to learn so much about the process, witnessing firsthand the stages from conception to completion, but I can't seem to get in. Maybe I don't deserve to get in. It's a bit like retelling someone else's anecdote and getting the credit. I wouldn't have pitched the idea if it weren't for Ben. But I do have an idea that is completely my own, my Afra discovery, and I'm going straight to the top with that one. Okay, I need meetings with... And Penny lists the names of colleagues as she taps away at her keyboard. Right. Anything else? How's it all going? She continues to stare at her computer screen. Her eyeshadow is bright purple today, and she's pushed her glasses up to keep the growing strands of hair out of her eyes. Chris tells me she's happy with how hard you're working. Now or never. Yes, all fine, I answer. Speaking of Chris, I wanted to tell her about this proposal I have, but she's out this afternoon. Oh, Penny says. Shit. She's looking directly at me now, her fingers hovering above her keyboard. Chris mentioned we need new ideas, preferably from our own writers, and I found Afra Gaston Blake. She's the wife of baker Stephen Blake, I say. She has a food blog she doesn't update much. I printed out a few of her recipes. But her Instagram is full of delicious home-cooked Middle Eastern meals. I know she's not on our list, but she is affiliated via her husband and might be open if we approach her rather than asking her to submit. She doesn't have an agent or any professional cooking experience, I don't think, but she might be worth looking into. Penny walks over to the table and looks at the recipes and screenshots of Afra's Instagram I've laid out. She says. Perhaps. She gives me a friendly smile, then leaves the papers and returns to her desk. She's back to tapping away in no time. Ouch. Maybe I should have gone to Chris. I stand up and start gathering the papers. No, you can leave them there, Maddie, Penny says. I'll take a look later. Oh, okay, great. I leave the room triumphant.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Just when things are looking up for Maddie, she gets some devastating news. In this 5th episode of Maame by Jessica George. Read by me, Claire Hope Asherty. I'm thinking tonight might be the night for a bath when, in the kitchen, Joe says, I'm meeting some friends at a bar at 8 and I'm dragging you both with me. I've noticed Joe's constant need to include us in things, to not be alone. No way, Cam says. We've got our flight to Florence tomorrow afternoon. I'm baking a cake for my dad's birthday tonight, remember? I say, pointing to the ingredients I've already left out on the counter. I haven't seen Dad since I moved out, so I thought I'd make him a cake, then go home in the morning and spend the day with him there. Come on, you two! And Joe's shoulders slump. You know I could use a night out. This Sam thing is getting to me. Yesterday, Joe told us that she and Sam had an argument and that he no longer wanted to see her. I'd Googled what to do when your flatmate is dumped by someone they're casually seeing, but Google seemed very confused with at least 2 parts of that sentence. Joe catches Cam wavering and adds, I can't believe I'm having to convince 2 women in their 20s to have a good time. Cam, I won't get drunk, especially if you're there to stop me. And Maddie, bake the cake now and decorate tomorrow. Done. I'd rather not. But then Joe convinces Cam, and I don't want to miss out on even more. They're already going to have a 2-day head start in Florence without me. Joe's right. I can bake the cake now, and it will be perfectly cooled by tomorrow morning. I can't lift my head the following morning. My phone buzzes and my temples pulse. My mouth is too dry to open. I reach for my phone and realise my eyes are still closed. The daylight is blinding and I curse the sun. It's just hit noon and I should be at home for Dad's birthday right now. I sit up with an unintelligible groan and think I might be sick. I'd Google hangover symptoms because I feel like I only have 5 minutes left to live, but I can't see straight. My head is so heavy. I'm not that late, and Dad's not going anywhere. I'll just rest my head on my pillow, only for a minute. 10 minutes maybe. Half an hour at most. I wake up to a persistent buzzing. My phone is ringing, Mum London, and underneath the time, 14:47. I jump out of bed and answer. It's fine, I'll just take the cake home and decorate it there. Hi Mum, sorry, I'm later than I said I was going to be. I grab a towel and reach for my shower cap. I went to bed late, I explain when Mum doesn't say anything back. So that's why I'm muddy? I stop because Mum's voice is thick and heavy. Mum, what's wrong? Muddy, your father, he is dead. He's dead. I freeze on the spot, half out of last night's dress. What did she say? Your father's dead, she repeats, then begins to choke and cry. I shake my head. But it's his birthday, I tell her. I know, she says. Oh God, to take him on his birthday. And just now too, not 30 minutes long. I've been trying to call you, but he is dead. Maddie, he is dead. My body finally hears her, and it happens all at once. The punching of my heart, the loosening of my stomach, the burning in my chest. My belly heaves in and out. Maddie, your father is... Stop saying that, I snap. I heard you the first time. I pull my phone away and stare at the red end call button. I'm sorry, Maddie, she continues to cry down the line. I hang up the phone and hold it to my chest. The only thing I can think about is Mum saying he died 30 minutes before, meaning I'd have been there if I'd woken up when I was meant to. I would have seen him one last time, said happy birthday, and kissed his forehead. I stand, gently swaying on the spot until I trust my hands to pull my dress back on. I'm on autopilot when I walk out of my room and down the stairs. I can hear suitcase wheels and pockets of conversation. They're talking about Florence. Missing the last step, I trip and end up on the floor on my hands and knees. They both rush in and Joe laughs. Still hungover, huh? I get up slowly. It was a bad idea to go out last night, Cam says. We need to leave in 15 minutes. You're so lucky you don't have to catch this flight with... Maddie? My dad's just died. For a few seconds, no one says anything. Shit, Joe breathes. Cam gently takes my arm and walks me into the kitchen. She sits me at the table. My eyes are blurry, but I hear the kettle being switched on. She makes me a cup of tea. Maddie, Joe says, shaking her head. What happened? When I repeat some of my mother's words, they stand above me, and they are sorry and coo until Joe says, Shit, I can't believe we have to leave soon. We can't go now. What? Joe turns to Cam so fast her hair whips across her face. Tickets are non-refundable, she whispers. I look at Joe and my chest fills with air. I'm trying to expel it as quickly as possible, because it's not that she's callous, and it's not that I'd rather they stay, it's... I stand up. You asked me. You made me stay out. Joe stiffens. What? After the first bar, I said I should go home. I don't know why I'm saying this, but I can't bear the weight of this guilt I'm feeling. It's as if I might drown under it. I tried to do the right thing, to come home, and for a brief moment it's not my fault anymore. I didn't even want to go out last night. If I'd stayed home, I'd have spent the night baking, gone to bed on time, and woken up early with a clear head. Joe, if it wasn't for you, I'd have seen my dad today before he died. Maddie? She breathed slowly, eyes locked on mine. I'm really sorry you lost your dad, but I didn't make you do anything. You decide what you do, and you decided to stay out with us. That's not true, I shout, because the guilt is on a round trip returning to its rightful place. And somehow, the tea slips from my hand. Or I throw it, because the mug ends up shattering against the wall. Don't worry about your non-refundable tickets, I say quietly. I'd rather you were both gone. I won't be in the flat much anyway, will I? Not with a funeral to plan. Mum calls me again, and I answer from the floor. She tells me how it happened in between breathless sobs. She'd been out and Dawood found him in his chair with vomit all down his front. She walked in the door 10 minutes later. The ambulance arrived, and he was pronounced dead. Just like that. Don't be heartbroken, Maame, Mum says. He is with God now. He was alone on his birthday, I ask quietly. He was alone when he died. Mum begins to cry again. I end the call. A few hours go by, and I'm staring at Nia's number when a message comes through from Ben. I know we said we'd see each other tomorrow, but can I come over? Work was rough. I get off the floor, wash my face and wait. I think about how to tell Ben, whether I even should tell him, or if I can pretend for a little while longer that my dad is still alive. When he knocks on the door, I still haven't decided, but I've barely gotten the latch off when he bursts through, loosening his tie. They had to call me in on a Sunday. Can you imagine? Incompetence will be that company's ruin. Mark my words, he says. I immediately want to shrink his presence, to package him up and send him home. I'm so glad to see you. He kisses me, slamming the door shut and presses me up against the wall. He's heavy, and I can't feel enough of myself to pull away. I close my eyes and try to sink into his attention, and although rough and hard, there's a bite to him that I enjoy, or at least need. It's painful, and Ben is sharp and quick with his pleasure. I suck in my breath whilst Ben's escapes in guttural grunts. I use the toilet, sit on the bathroom floor feeling nauseous but enjoying the cold tiles on my skin. Ben knocks and walks in to find me naked with my knees under my chin and my eyes wet, rocking gently. On the floor of my bathroom in a rented flat is where I tell Ben that my father is gone and he won't ever come back. And he says the expected. The exclamation to a God he probably doesn't believe in, and a subtle shift of accountability. He really wishes I told him earlier. Maybe I should have. But he's sorry. He's so sorry, Maddie. He leaves because he has to go to work. I ignore the relief I feel at being alone in the house. I finally call Nia to tell her and ask if she can stay over. I expected her to say she'll do her best to get here tomorrow, since she hasn't seen her family for almost a year. But instead she tells me she's going to grab some food for me and get the next bus down. When she walks through the door, I feel a lightness enter with her. She manages to push the darkness away with every step forward she takes. I think about how lucky I am that she returned to London this week. You look nice, I tell her. She's redone her locks. Really? She shrugs. It's good to see you, Maddie. I'm really sorry about your dad. It takes Nia an entire minute to say those 4 sentences, but that's the way she speaks, slowly and carefully. She gives me a long hug, and she smells light and fresh and of secondary school. We leave it there. She doesn't ask why or how. She unpacks the food she bought, container after container, and puts them in my fridge. Then we watch films for the rest of the day. I finally go home. On the train, I put on headphones that inhale and swallow any outside noise, and I count the stops until I reach Thornton Heath Station. James is home. He gives me a hug and my face squashes against his chest. He asks how I'm doing. I experience a flicker of annoyance, and it's nice to feel another emotion for a moment. When was the last time I saw James in person? When was the last time he came to this house? I pull away and say, I'm fine. Upstairs, Mum immediately hugs me and starts to cry. And I begin to cry. Because she smells like my mum, and the last time I smelt her, my dad was downstairs in his chair. Mum goes to make lunch. I hear her and James talking in the kitchen. It's not a civilised conversation. It's funny, really, because what my mum dislikes in my brother is what my brother dislikes in my mum. But neither of them can see they're arguing with themselves. Dad was fine when Maddie was here, James says. No problems until you came back. Then Maddie had to leave and Dad got sicker. And where were you, eh? Mum asks, clapping her hands. Gallivanting across the globe with money your mother desperately needs. When were you last here looking after your father? You are both his children, and Maddie did everything alone. Last time I was here, you were in Ghana and Dad was alive, he responds. So don't ask about me. His sister never speaks to me this way, Mum says. Her voice trembles, and I know she's looking at the ceiling talking to God. At least I have one child who loves me. Maddie doesn't know you, that's why, James says. You think I don't know he came to London with you this time? He tried to follow me on Facebook. Kwaku, yeah? That's why you wanted Maddie out of the house, so she wouldn't catch you. If I see that man put one foot in here, I'm gonna... I close the bedroom door and turn the TV volume up.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Maddie's dad has died, but she's trying to carry on as normal. Determined to keep up appearances, she heads off to a party. This is episode 6 of an abridged version of Maame by Jessica George. My phone flashes with a birthday reminder for Ben's CEO. Ben. My finger hovers over the delete button. But you could go. No one there except for Ben will know what happened. I can be fun and free tonight. I call Ben, but he doesn't answer. That's fine because he saved the address in the calendar invite. The celebration is being held in one of the many high-rise glass buildings on Liverpool Street. Outside, it's guarded by decorative stone pillars, and inside, I'm confronted with an expansive waiting area with a wall aquarium full of live fish behind it. Wow, I breathe. I follow the receptionist's instructions and walk into a large room not that full of people. Trying to find Ben is very much like the suit and tie version of Where's Wally, only Wally is also wearing a suit. I'm the only black person, bar a few waiting staff. I know what to do, how not to bring attention to myself. I'm skilled in assimilation, though my subconscious is quick to remind me that it's nothing to be proud of. I spot Ben, and my fingers tingle. I have missed him. When he meets my eyes, his face drops. He looks at the woman standing beside him, and then hurries over. Maddie, what are you doing here? You invited me, remember? I nod until he does. Sorry I'm so late. Maddie, I didn't think you'd come. Your dad. There's a clinking sound and someone calls for Ben, a man standing atop a podium at the far end of the room. Ben, he hollers. Speech! Ben's eyes are frantic when he looks back at me. He walks onto the stage and straightens his suit jacket. My brain is working slower than usual, and I can tell there's something I'm not quite grasping despite it being right in front of me. As his speech continues, and Ben takes his eyes off me, the woman who was previously stood beside him slides closer. Her brunette hair is down to her waist and her eyes are a disconcerting blue under a dark cluster of eyelashes. "Hello, I'm Sophie," she says quietly. "Maddie," I say just as quietly. I don't want to risk being heard over Ben's speech, but I also want to ask why her name is so familiar. "How do you know Ben?" she asks. Her voice makes me shiver and the word saccharine comes to mind. "Oh, he's my boyfriend. We've been dating for a while." She coughs in surprise, placing her hand to her chest. "Are you sure?" she asks. I turn to her and frown. That would be an odd thing to be uncertain about. She smiles, and I don't like it. It triggers something in my brain, and I ask, "How do you know Ben?" "I'm also dating him." My mouth opens, but no words come out. She smiles again. "Well, I suppose we haven't yet had the exclusive conversation, but I assumed we were, seeing as I met his parents last weekend." "Last weekend?" I pause. "So the Saturday?" She nods, frowning. "So he slept with me on Sunday." I'm blinking a lot and my throat feels tight. "After having introduced you to his parents the previous day?" "You're joking." She rounds on me and I notice by way of her tight dress that she has an exaggerated hourglass figure. "Or is that your deal then?" she asks me. "Were you actually dating?" I don't know what to say and I feel very small. Sophie rolls her eyes. "I hope you're going to give him hell for this." She straightens her shoulders and tilts back her head. "I certainly am. No offence, Maggie, but I don't share." I leave the room with a familiar ringing in my ears. My vision's blurred so I can't see the way I came in, and instead keep walking down a long corridor before calling an Uber. I sit with my head against the window, watching the city's lights and the road's cars and London's people, and silently cry. I tell Nia and Shu what happened and they both come over. It's weird seeing the two of them together because they're not exactly friends. They only know of each other through me. "Shower, please." I do as Shu says. I brush my teeth, scrub my face and pull my hair up, and when I'm done, Nia's changed my bedding and loaded the washing machine. She's bought lots of salad and fruit. We sit in the living room and eat on the floor. I didn't love him, I admit. Not the way I was supposed to, and I know that. But I loved feeling wanted. I just don't understand why this happened. "This isn't your fault, Mads," Shu says, looking closer at her phone. "I think I found her. This bitch." She turns her phone to me, and on it is a picture of Sophie, with pouted lips in another figure-hugging dress. In the caption, she thanks Babe for the sparkling bracelet encircling her wrist. The picture was posted 2 days ago. Yes, that's her. I stare at the photo and try to pick faults, but it doesn't matter if I find any. He still chose her. "How did you find her?" "She's tagged on his Instagram," Shu says. "Oh, look at that. Big lips and wide hips." Nia tuts. Typical. I look between the two of them. What am I missing? Nia continues to stroke my hair. "Ben may be a certain type of man," she says gently. "He likes your features, just not on you," she finishes bluntly. "Now that I look at him closely, he does give off that racist vibe." I jerk back. "Racist? That's a bit strong. Ben's not... He doesn't hate me." "Maddie," Nia looks at me with pity. "A white person can date a black person and still be racist. Because there's levels to that shit, like a lasagna." I frown, but Shu says, "Stay with me. So on the top, that cheesy layer, that's what you can see clearly. Hate speech, mad looks and violence. Obvious stuff you can't ignore. But all them layers underneath, the ones that are harder to see, microaggression and unconscious bias? Giving your white girlfriend jewellery and meet and greets with the family, but your black girlfriend dinner in your house? Racism, hun. I'm still not entirely convinced. Maybe Ben is a bad person to every woman. But then Nia says, the simple idea that the white girl he's seeing is the one to invest in suggests your level of worth to be less than hers. And it isn't. You are worth everything she is, do you hear me? You are not the problem. I look at her and quietly ask, I'm not? You're not, she says resolutely. Maddie, what you'll come to learn is that not everyone is capable of dating a black woman. Not that... Shu coughs. Or an Asian woman, Nia adds, and Shu nods. There's a level of learning and understanding that goes into it. You don't just date her, but her history too. Does he educate himself? Follow the news? Raise his voice in uncomfortable conversations? Does he ever question the system that works very well for him but does the opposite for you? He doesn't have to do it with a megaphone, but he does have to do it. You don't want a boyfriend who isn't racist, Maddie. You need a boyfriend who is actively anti-racist. Ben probably isn't even aware he's projecting these microaggressions. Hey, I'm sleeping with a black girl and I like it. I can't be racist. In his head, he's chosen Sophie because he's known her longer, or maybe they work in similar fields, whatever. But really, a man like that clearly exists in a certain environment, and maybe telling his parents or explaining you to his friends is just too much hassle. Too much hassle. Even the idea that this could be true makes my heart break. I have a dentist appointment in the afternoon, which, considering current circumstances, feels ridiculously trivial. When I get the reminder, I think it's a joke, but it's not. And cancelling only hours before will land me with a fee I can't afford this month. I'm thinking of what train will get me to the dentist on time when my heart starts beating really fast. Nausea blocks my throat and suddenly I'm dizzy. I pull my top off to cool down. I end up on all fours breathing heavily. I might pass out. I think I'm going to die. I don't want Nia to find me dead and topless. I try to stand, but I'm still shaking. My heart is beating so fast, short, hard, endless beats. Sweat drips down my back and my stomach loosens, and I have to run to the toilet, and as I sit, my breath comes out in shallow puffs. I close my eyes, and a few minutes later, I've come back to myself. Was that a panic attack? I shake my head. I don't suffer from panic attacks. I get dressed and wait for the next train. I'm home for a traditional Ghanaian ceremony. Within the first 2 weeks of someone passing away, surviving relatives visit the house of the deceased to perform a libation. Apparently, we believe that during this time, the spirit of the deceased is still around, calling to the spirits of family members who have already died. In this case, my dad's parents and his older sister. We pour a glass of strong liquor on the ground outside the house as a way of inviting them here, so we can let them know that Dad is joining them. When everyone begins to filter out of the house, I tidy away what's left in the living room and take it to the kitchen sink. Madeleine! I turn and there's Dawood, all 6 foot something of him, blocking the doorway. I'd almost forgotten about Dawood, which is cruel of me. Mum must have invited him. I'm so glad that she did. How are you? He pulls me into a quick hug, which he's never done before, a big palm slapping my back. Sorry, I have not appeared, he says, letting me go. I go to other patients. You understand? Of course. He nods and suddenly says, I miss your father. This surprises me, and I almost ask if he even knew Dad. My other patients, Dawood continues, they don't like to talk with me. I frown, thinking of Dad, tired and reserved in his armchair. Talk? Yes. Your father, He always talked to me. He did? Oh, yes. And Dawood smiles brightly. I always start talking and his brain warm up. Then we talk together. I nod eagerly. I want to hear more. I need to hear proof that the man he's talking about really is Dad. I tell him about my job. I read him newspaper. And then he tells me things about his home. Kumasi. Oh my. His family, his sister, Becca? Rebecca, yes. And you. Me? Ha! Of course. You, Madeleine. Always you. You at school, getting good scores, you come home and read. No trouble for him. Good daughter. Yes, he will always talk about you. Oh, why are you crying? He frowns and rips off a piece of kitchen towel to hand to me. He's frowning because he thinks I know all of this. But I don't. He thinks Dad and I always spoke, but we rarely did. He thinks I sat down and waited for Dad's brain to warm up. But I didn't. Because Dad had always been so quiet and aloof before he was sick that it never even occurred to me that aspect might have changed. I thought Dad was like me, that we didn't need anyone. James and Mum were the social ones, and we were the introverts. What if all this time I'd been wrong? When a message comes in from Mum the next day, my anxiety spikes. I try to read the first line to glean whether I should open it or not. It looks harmless. However, Maddie, how are you today? You and your brother need to gather some funds quickly because it's the children who bury their father. Once the body is released, you will have only 2 weeks to put him to his final rest. You can get a bank loan if you don't have the money. Thanks. As I stare at her message, all those symptoms return. A hit of dizziness, shortness of breath, a tight chest, the illusion that my bedroom is shrinking. However, it's not fear I feel this time, but anger.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Life is difficult for Maddie in the 7th part of Maame by Jessica George. Grieving for her father, she's been signed off work. She's dumped Ben, she's single again. But perhaps a chance encounter will cheer her up. It's quickly agreed that of the £6,000 funeral bill, I'll put in 3, leaving my savings account completely empty. It's hard to see the money go, to no longer have a financial safety net, and I cry about it. Then I wipe my face and get on with folding my laundry because he's my dad and I have the money, so there's nothing else to be done. James called to apologise, to say he was sorry he couldn't give more and that it was up to me again. I cut the conversation off there because the way I see it, apologies only benefit the beggar. Someone knocks on the door and I discover I'm home alone when it goes unanswered. I ask who it is and a man says, "Oh, it's Sam? You don't sound sure." He laughs. "It's Sam, I promise." I open the door and there stands a tall black man with an incredible smile. "Sorry about that," he says. "You must be Maddie." "You're Sam? Joe's Sam?" He lifts his mouth to the side. "Sorry," I rush. "Joe's ex-Sam, ex-boyfriend, casually." "Yes, that's me." He holds his phone up. "She says she's on her way. Mind if I come in?" "Of course." I move out of the way and nod. "Want to wait in her room?" "No, that's probably a bad idea. All the memories of conversations you've shared, I mean." He presses his lips together before saying, "Living room's fine." He takes a seat on the sofa, and when he leans forward to tighten the laces on his trainers, his knees are almost the height of his chest. Okay, well, I'll leave. You work for OTP, right? He suddenly says. Joe mentioned. Oh, yes, I do. I play with my neck because I haven't got a bra on. How are you finding the place? It's good. Sorry, how do you know about OTP? People outside of publishing tend to blank when I mention it. Wait, Joe did say you're an artist? He smiles. I prefer the term illustrator. I don't know what that preference says about him, but he continues to look at me, so I sit on the other side of the sofa. Have you submitted samples to OTP? Not yet, but my agent alerted me to the fact that someone there's been asking after my schedule. Thea? I know her, kind of, but I know she only approaches people she's really interested in. That's good to know. We sit in silence and I wonder if I should excuse myself, and how. He's still looking at me and there's a slight dip between his eyebrows. I don't get the impression he's frowning. Joe also mentioned you lost your dad recently. He says this quietly, and his eyes have changed. He looks genuinely sorry for me, which I find odd because he doesn't even know me. I'm so sorry. I mentally pull out my short list of acceptable Google-provided responses, but before I can pick one, his phone vibrates. Probably Joe. He reads the message, but then rolls his eyes, laughing to himself. She's running late? I ask. What? No, that was a text from my mum. Your mum texted you too? I realise quickly how weird a thing that is to say. All mums text their children. Yeah, my mum's... He frowns and shakes his head. You don't want to hear about my mum texting me. No, I do, I say before I can help myself. My mum... Is this a weird conversation to have with someone I've never met before today? But he's listening, with his head tilted and his eyebrows raised. My mum sends me texts that make me roll my eyes. Lovingly. Sometimes. Not often. I wave a hand dismissively. All mums do, I guess. Sam considers me. My mum isn't like other mums, he says slowly. I told her I was coming here today and she asked if I'd prayed for guidance. I'm almost 30. He puts his phone away. My mum's... my mum. Then there's a key in the door. Sam? Joe is back. I excuse myself, and the living room door closes when I'm halfway up the stairs. At the funeral home, Roz, the funeral director, is dressed in black. She takes Mum and me into a small room with dim lights and candles in the corner. My hands start to shake and I don't know where to look. Then I see him, and a helpless cry escapes before Roz even manages to close the door behind her. No. Oh, Dad. The coffin lid is propped up, resting against the wall. Waiting. That's it. He really is gone. No. I shake my head. No. Mum rubs my back. It's okay, Maame. No, it's not okay. Mum pulls me to her, and I cry into her jumper until my throat is tight. I step away and roughly dry my eyes because I need to see him. This will be my last chance to see him. I turn my head and notice he looks the same. Except maybe his lips have thinned a little. He could be sleeping. I stare until I realise I'm waiting for his eyes to open. There's no look of frustration or uncertainty on his face, the expressions I'd grown used to seeing. His forehead is smooth, and his hands, placed on his stomach, are still. He's not in pain anymore. He has on his grey wedding suit, a white shirt underneath, and I press a hand to my mouth when I see he also wears his chunky silver bracelet. The bracelet he has on in the photograph I have of him. The bracelet that has been on his wrist through sickness and in health. Mum speaks to him in Tree. "May God bless you, Fifi. Go with him, okay? Go with God." She's crying harder than I've ever seen before. Tears are streaming from her eyes, and she punctuates her sentences with hiccups. "You have suffered so much," she says to him. "Trapped. But now you are finally free. Go with God and be free." It's comforting to hear not so much the words, but my mother tongue, the language of my parents. Joe has friends over in the garden when I get back. Cam is with them. They're all laughing and drinking in the early evening sun. I stand by the stairs and introduce myself. They ask if I want to join them, but I politely decline and go up to my room. But I can still hear them. "Times like this, you've got to leave her alone, I think," says one of Joe's friends. "Especially after the whole 'it's your fault' thing." "Yeah, I kind of leave her to it," Joe says. "I'm not fussed, and I don't hold grudges." "How's it been living with her in general?" "Fine," Joe replies. "She's clean, quiet. We don't really talk. Well, we did before, but she doesn't really talk at all now. Most of the time she's alone upstairs or just sits in the living room watching TV." "Oh, bless, that's sad." "I know." The doorbell rings. "That's our pizza." I wipe my eyes dry. A little later I go down to cook some pasta. Laughter spills from the garden. "I'm sure there was a time when I was happy," I say to the boiling pot of pasta. "But how do you measure that? How do you know if you're genuinely happy or if you're just mostly all right? Maybe I've only ever been all right." I eat my pasta in my room but keep replaying Joe's words and feel lonely in a way that hollows out my chest and stomach. I log into church online and load the latest message. I realise I haven't been since Dad died. I'm sure God understands I'm on annual leave from everything. I zone out, catching words and scriptures, but something snaps me back to attention right before the group prayer starts. The pastor says, "We want to encourage you all to pray right now. Those of you here today and those of you watching at home. If there is anyone out there suffering, we want to pray for and with you right now." This is a staple of the Sunday service. It's an ending as guaranteed as death. I have heard those words on so many Sundays, but today they feel new and tailored. He sounds so sincere when he looks directly into the camera and says, "We just want to pray for you." I could exit the browser. I could just shut my laptop. But instead, I listen, captivated, as he prays to God on our behalf. We are his children, and there is nothing God wouldn't do for us. We are loved, and we are blessed. I cry. Not because I agree, but because it hurts that I don't. Because I wish that I did. Instead, I wake up every day, and I smile when I need to, and talk when I have to. But I am in constant pain, and I have been for too long. One song closes, and another is sung. We're encouraged to go to God not only for our material requests, but all things. I recall my prayers over the years. I remember that I have not asked for a car or money I didn't earn. In varying degrees of desperation, I have asked to be fixed. I wipe my nose and tell the empty space around me that all I want is to be less sad. After the service, my phone buzzes with a reminder. Caro Writer's deadline. It's a writing opportunity I found in the library. I look through my work in progress folder and, without opening the document, select the 900 and something word passage I wrote about leaving Dad. I submit it without rereading. Even though I'm still off work, I decide I'm going to try to look at my emails today. I wrap a cardigan around me and sit out in the garden with a tall glass of water. I skip through all the condolence emails, opening but not really reading them. Then I see the repetition of the words, love stories. Love stories? What's that? Via a thread of emails, I discover they followed up with Afra Yazdan Blake and signed her on, with Chris acting as head editor. I'm not usually CC'd into creative emails, but I think Penny's been adding me in when the rest forget to. I go through them all and gather that Afra's book will be called Love Stories from the Middle East. I go through every single email in my inbox, and not once am I mentioned for bringing Afra forward. Maybe they said it out loud in the office, but I doubt it. I hit reply all to an email thread about how to best present the fact that not all the recipes in the book are Afra's, but also from her dinner guests. How about Love Stories from the Middle East by Afra Yazdan Blake et al.? I type. When I first found Afra on Instagram, she was quick to credit any recipes that weren't hers, so I think she'd like that. Best, Maddie. It's not the best idea I've had, since cookbooks don't ever feature the words et al., but I needed to write something that would allow me to mention that I was the one who found Afra. I hit send and Google, does your line manager steal your ideas? An email from Chris pops up. It's so good to hear from you, Maddie, but there's no pressure to return to work. If you feel you need to, do only bits of what you can. Selecting your favourite photographers for love stories might be a fun task. See email below. I don't ever get to do anything creative, such as choose photographers. I assumed the design team would do that. But this task must have been given solely to placate me. Still, I click the links to the various portfolios and spend the rest of the afternoon going through food websites and photographs, keeping the book's synopsis in mind. I whittle my top 8 down to 3 and send those to Chris, CCing in Penny. By 3 in the afternoon, I have no other responses to my et al. Email and close my laptop. Jo sent a group message to say she's got a date and will be back late. I immediately wonder if it's with Sam, and then decide she'd have said if it was. I shouldn't care if it is, but I do.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Maame by Jessica George, Episode 8. Despite her recent anxiety and panic attacks, Maddie has gone back to work after her dad's death. Her boss, Penny, has noticed how depressed she seems and has sent her to meet the office counsellor. I've never been to the HR room, so it takes me a couple of wrong turns to find it. I can't help but feel like I'm in trouble, that I'm doing something wrong. You go to therapy if you have serious problems, if you're a threat to yourself. People lose relatives every day, but they're not all in therapy, so why me? I can't tell Mum about this. Unless God works for the HR department, she'll find this unacceptable. I knock on the door and enter a small room with only a sofa, chair, where a black woman sits, and a wooden table in between. The floor is grey carpet and the walls are cream, with only one small window and a clock. Hello, Madeline. Penny mentioned you might pop in. Please, take a seat, the woman says. Her hair stands out in an afro, and her lips are well defined with a sharp cupid's bow. I think it must be easy to apply lipstick. She gestures to the chair opposite. Her tone is gentle, but no nonsense. I put my bag down and do as she says. Madeline or Maddie? She asks. Maddie is fine, thanks. Good. You can call me Angelina. She crosses one leg over the other. She's wearing a navy pantsuit with a white blouse underneath and high heels on her feet. I want to ask if she has suits in brighter colours. A yellow, maybe. How are you today? Fine, thank you. You know, as I can be. Angelina nods and waits. Her mouth closed as she smiles. I outweight her. And returning to work? This is day 3. I nod. Fine, too. She waits, and I start pinching my palms. I just wish... Yes? I think you'll judge me. It's not my job to judge. That doesn't mean you won't. That's fine to think so, Angelina says, although I notice she doesn't deny it. What were you going to say? You just wish... I wish people would stop asking how I am. That's natural. Yes, but I'd also be offended if they didn't. Go on. I wish everyone would ask me how I am at once, I say, so I can give them all one answer simultaneously, because now I'm just repeating myself, which feels like a disservice to my dad. And then sometimes the person asking just waits, stares, and I think, do they want me to break down and cry? Are they judging me and wondering why I'm not? Or are they giving me space to talk, and that's not actually what I want right now? But maybe they know better, and it's what I need. I don't know. I got really angry because Melanie wasn't in on Monday, which meant I'd have to start all over again the next day, and the next day with someone new, and so on. It's just tiring. I'm tired. You're entitled to feel tired. That's it. Yes. You have nothing else to say to all of that. She uncrosses her legs. Were you hoping for a solution today, Maddie? I'm afraid there isn't one. I'm just here for you to talk to. But then, couldn't I speak to anyone? Why are you different? Perhaps there's some advice or reassurance I can provide you that others maybe haven't. Right. You sound sceptical. Has well-meaning advice or words of reassurance proved fruitless so far? You could say that. On my first day back, my mum said, God is with you, Maame. Have a good day and call me if work is too much. It was too much, but I didn't call her. I just skipped lunch and walked around Farringdon. Your mother calls you Maame? Yes, Maame means... I know what it means. Angelina smiles, a bit sadly, if I'm not mistaken. I'm the eldest of 3 sisters, and it's what my mother called me. You're Ghanaian? I am indeed. Which means I'm well aware of the importance of names in our culture. In many ways, they're given to us in an attempt to speak to our future. Growing up, I had many friends named Glory, Patience, Wisdom, Comfort. It seems there is a link between our names and our supposed destiny. We could apply that thinking to the name Maame, the responsible one, the woman, the mother, often before her time. Angelina closes her notebook. How do you feel about that name, Maddie? I shift. This question has suddenly made me very uncomfortable. Why are we talking about my nickname? Because I'd like to get to know you, she answers simply. Seconds tick by before I hear myself say, I used to love it. And now? Now I might hate it. I give my brain time to process. I think I hate what it means and what it's done to me. What has it done to you? It made me grow up, I answer. It made me grow up when I should have had more time. It made my dad overlook me when I was a child, my mum leave me behind, and my brother get away with doing the bare minimum. It made me lonely, and it made me sad. It made me responsible and guilty. It made me someone, if given the choice, I wouldn't want to be. After I leave the HR room, I head straight for the exit. The last thing Angelina said to me was that maybe Maddie and Maame could use some distance, as if it would be easy to separate the two. They're the same person, always have been. I start walking until I realise I've gone from Farringdon to Tottenham Court Road. I make it to the traffic lights just after the station, and when I turn back, I spot Mum through the glass window of a coffee shop. What's Mum doing here? Is she looking for me? She rarely comes to central London because, and I quote, "it's too noisy and busy for no reason." But there she is, sat at a table by the window, and if she'd only looked to her left, she'd notice me. I think she's about to before she's joined by a man in jeans and a white t-shirt. Immediately, instinctively, I know this man is Kweku, my mum's boyfriend. The green man signals we can cross the street, but I let people push past me and tut until I'm jostled to the edge. I can't take my eyes off the coffee shop window. Through the glass, I can see Kweku must be in his 50s, like Mum, but he's very well built. And he sits with his back straight and his hands now holding my married mother's. Widowed mother's. I creep closer and crouch behind a letterbox like the world's shittiest spy and stare. Kweku gently rubs the back of Mum's hand, and my first thought is, how does he manage to do something so gently with hands as big as his? My second thought is, he looks nothing like my dad. Maybe that's the point. Mum looks down at their entwined hands, and I notice her head is slightly bowed and her shoulders loose. Then when he moves to sit next to her, his arm around her, she turns miniature. She rests her head on his shoulder, and only then, with her head upturned, do I see the tears running down her cheeks. I straighten my back because I've never seen my mum so soft and taken care of. Kweku wipes her eyes with his thumb, kisses the top of her head, and she closes her eyes. He loves her, and, worst of all, she loves him too. Suddenly, this is unforgivable. I walk up to the window, not taking my eyes off them until Kweku clocks me and frowns. Realisation hits him between the eyes, assisted by Mum sitting upright with a face slack with horror. In that moment, I wonder if it's too late to pretend I didn't see anything, because this version of my mum unnerves me. There's no confidence or assuredness. She's stuck, with no way out. But I'm down the rabbit hole. People sat at surrounding tables are staring too, at the young woman with her nose inches away from the glass. Then I'm running across the road and into Tottenham Court Road station, down the escalators and into the next train arriving on the platform. But sat in an almost empty carriage, I realise this is not a spontaneous journey to who knows where. I'm going to Thornton Heath via Balham. Then I'll take the bus home. And I'll wait for Mum there. But Mum isn't the first person through the door. Whilst I'm pacing in the kitchen, clenching and unclenching my fists, trying to make sense of the words and scenes running in my head, James walks in. "What are you doing here?" He scratches his head. "Mum told me you saw her." A car's engine dies down outside. "Oh, good to know you two can band together in times of crisis. I have to keep that in mind." Mum runs in, and I start to clap. "Here she is. James, look. Here she is. God's #1 spokesperson." James' eyes widen. "Mads, are you all right?" I'm shivering and sweating, and I either sink in case I need to vomit. No, I'm not." They both try to say something, but all I can hear is my own voice. "So, Mum, adultery's the one you went for, huh?" "Madeline. I mean, out of all the rules from the big boss upstairs, what is adultery? Top 10? Coming in hot right under murder." My voice alternates in pitch whilst it familiarises itself with my rage. "Where were you when my dad died?" Mum doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. She was with him. Her face is pale. Her eyes are pink and she's shaking too. This is the first time I've made my mum cry. But my own tears today won't even crack her top 50. I step towards her. You tell me how to live, how to pray and who to see. But who's telling you these things? Maame, please. Don't call me Maame. Mum's head jerks back, and even James tilts his. Like me, they don't know where that came from. I am so tired of everyone in this family acting the way they do because Maame is always there to pick up the pieces, to sort out your mess, to look after you. You are both supposed to be looking after me. You, I point at Mum, with your condescending adages and your mother knows these things, your nitpicking and nothing I do ever being enough. There is always something else Maame can do for you. James claps. That's what I've been saying. Mum needs to. James, fuck off. Subconscious Maddie, like everyone in the room, stands with her mouth gaping open. What? I ask him. Why do you look so surprised when useless thy name is James? When have you ever put me first? Huh? When? Exactly. I am the youngest one in this family, but no one takes care of me. No one gives a shit. Sometimes I think I could get by just fine without the two of you, but I can't help but wonder, where would you both be without me? Now that Dad's no longer here, one day you're going to find out the answer to that question. One day, sweet, little, dependable, pushover, spineless, pathetic Maddie is going to leave you two to pick each other apart. Maame, you must. I said, don't call me Maame. We all stare at each other for a time. I wipe the spit from my chin and ignore the sweat under my nose and running down my back. My throat is dry, and a headache is building at my temples. I walk towards the door, but turn back only to say, my name is Maddie.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Maame by Jessica George, Episode 9. Maddie is struggling to cope with life. Overwhelmed by recent events, she's fainted in the office. But this traumatic moment helps bring mother and daughter closer. There's a blinding light in my eye. So it's true what they say about following the light when you die. The light disappears, and someone hoists me up and into a chair. My vision is still fuzzy when someone hands me a cup of water. I notice Penny standing in the corner. I wonder if she regrets hiring me. I can work from home. No, she says gently. You need to take today off. Chris gave your mother a call and she's on her way. I almost frown, wishing she'd called Nia or Shu, but fix my face in time. Thank you. Penny tuts at my sincerity. Don't be silly. Mum was very quiet when she came to pick me up. She asked if I was okay, felt my head, held onto my arm as we left the building, but said nothing else in the cab ride to the flat. I was planning on going straight to bed when we got back, but Mum steers me until she finds the kitchen and sits me at the table before filling a glass with water and placing it in front of me. You didn't have to come, I tell her when it's been quiet for too long. Of course I came, Mum said incredulously. I am your mother. She sighs. Maddie, just tell me what's wrong, eh? I look down at the table and I'm surprised when I say, I feel like it's my fault Dad's dead. Maddie, how can this be your fault? Because you moved out of the house. What do you think you could have done to stop it? At least I should have seen him on his birthday. Yes, that part is a shame, Maddie, and I am sorry for that. But you were there for all the other birthdays when James and I were not. Sometimes I didn't return from Ghana because I knew for your father, having you there was enough. I look up. It's no excuse, I know. But try to remember, if you feel guilty for missing one birthday when you were there for all the others, then how must your brother and I feel? I notice she's looking down and pinching her palm. When silence settles, I know it's time. Mum, about my screaming in the kitchen, she waves her hand, then presses a finger to her lips. She sighs in the neck of her jumper billows. I met Kweku at university in Accra, she says quietly. What, all those years ago? She swipes at me. I am not so old, and if I am, it is because you children have aged me. Anyway, I met him there and fell in love with him there. Love? Then why did you marry Dad? Because your grandfather told me to. I stare at her and it's like looking at someone else. Instead of looking at my mum, I'm having to look at my grandfather's daughter. Do you know much about bride wealth? She asks. Well, of course not. I never spoke to you children about it because it's not a tradition I wish for you to consider. I told you both that I moved to London for greater opportunities and met your father via a cousin. But that's not true. When I was much younger, I was promised to your father in return for wealth. It was an arranged marriage. I cover my ears. Oh, Maddie. She pulls my hands away. Your father and I were just people with real problems. Neither one of us was perfect. I loved your father in my own way, and I did the best I could, until I could not any longer. My mother has never said anything as profound as that. My parents are not special people. They're ordinary. And one of my problems is that I'm expecting perfection from ordinary people. Do you still love Kweku? She nods. I do. I left him in Ghana when I came to London to marry your father, but we reconnected on one of my many visits back. He is my best friend, and no one knows me as well as he does. I think of them sat in the coffee shop. The day I saw the two of you, why were you crying? Her shoulders sink. Guilt, she answers simply. I cry about it all the time. I pray about it all the time. You were right the other day, although you are not allowed to swear at me ever again. But I preach a lot when I too am going against God. I don't want the same for you. It is a struggle I've been fighting every day. I was going to leave your father, do things properly, but then he got sick, and I accepted that this was my punishment from God, and my penance would be to look after him whilst I was here. But your grandfather's business in Ghana was my loophole, my escape. I truly thought you were okay here, that you wanted to stay at home and not that you felt you needed to. Then you spoke of anxiety and hopelessness. It was like you were depressed. And after your phone call, it haunted me. I prayed and thought maybe the answer was to get you out of the house, living your life. Now look, the result is you blaming yourself for your father's death. She nods. Yes, I have made many mistakes. When she looks away, her neck stretches, forming dips, and her head looks smaller because of it. Has she always had bags under her eyes? Mum, are you okay? She looks at me and sniffs her emotions away. Of course I am. She gets up from the table and opens the fridge, burying her face inside. I'll make you something to eat, and then I have to go home to get the house sorted for the funeral. She frowns and pulls out a nearly empty vodka bottle. Does this belong to your flatmates? Yes. She purses her lips. I don't like them very much. As she busies herself around the kitchen, I remember something she said about her brother. Your uncle wants more time with the hostel. Bit late to help out now, but anyway. Mum? Yes, darling? Is the bottom shelf yours? Yes. Before Grandad died, was it just the two of you a lot? You and your dad? It was always the two of us, she says. You know, your grandma died when I was small, and you know your uncle is a lazy good-for-nothing. Which frying pan is yours? Ah, I see. So, yes, it was just your grandfather and me. Despite myself, I smile at the fact that Mum has yet to draw the parallel between us. I know Grandad couldn't have been in the greatest state of health before he passed, and I doubt Mum had the help of carers and a GP who could drop by the following weekday. And if my uncle was anything like James, she was very much on her own. I have a lot to learn about this woman. At least this time I'm not too late. I have something to ask, she suddenly says. What's that? She begins washing rice under the cold tap. At the house, you said I should not call you Maame. What did you mean by that? Oh, just... I don't really like what Maame means. And what does it mean to you? Woman, right? She nods. But you've been calling me a woman, an adult, since I was a child. You've always been wise beyond your years, she says. That is not a bad thing. However, Maame is only a term of endearment. I don't think your grandfather would call me Maame from when I was a baby. I watch as she laughs to herself. My brother, your uncle, would say, what would Daddy do without his Maame? What would your father have done without his? She returns to the fridge. We grow up fast, not by force, but because we are needed. I think sometimes we're needed for the wrong reasons. She pretends not to hear me. You don't have much here, Mum says. I hope you haven't been spending all your money on food from outside. I can make a stew with what you have. Go and lie down. I will call you when it's ready. Thank you. She nods me out of the kitchen. People are already outside the house when I arrive on the day of my father's funeral. They approach me to say sorry, to give me pats of condolence. One after the other, until I'm facing a woman with a rigid back, a black duku wrapped around her hair, painted eyebrows, and pursed lips sat solidly in the centre of her face. She looks down at me underneath full lashes. Baba, I am your Aunt Abena, she says in Tree. One of your father's many cousins. And this is your Uncle Ose? She gestures to the man beside her. Our condolences, she finishes. Thank you, I tell them both. She tilts her head. I said thank you. She doesn't move and continues to hold her rectangular purse to her stomach. Try again, she orders. I'm sorry? Am I speaking to you in English, Baba? I feel the sun burn my cheeks. No, you're speaking Tree. Exactly. So why are you responding in English? Do you not know your own language? I look around for help, someone to interrupt us. But no one is paying any attention. I know some. Then try. Thank you. Medase. She nods. Good. How have you been? She wants more. Go on, she pushes. Leave her be, her husband says. No, she responds, looking at me. She can do it. The day of her father's funeral is no day to be lazy. It's no day to speak English. He was born surrounded by those speaking in Tree, and he will be buried the same. If she wasn't so intimidating, I'd tell her that those were strong words coming from a woman I'm sure I've not met before. I'd tell her she doesn't have the right to tell me how to act or speak at my father's funeral. But looking around, it's clear that this is my extended family in a nutshell. It doesn't matter if we talk every day, or if we've never even met. She is family, and that means she can drop in whenever she likes and remind me of who my father is, and by default, who I am. Go on, Baba. I almost say I don't know how to respond, but then remember my mum's response to another auntie minutes ago. Mehoye, I say slowly. Wahotesen. My pronunciation isn't great, and I've probably missed out a word or two, but she breaks into a big smile. See? She knows it, Aunt Abena says. She thinks she doesn't, but it is in her. I've never been through a graveyard before. I used to avoid cemeteries because I worried it would tempt fate. Looks like fate found me anyway. Dad's immediate family sprinkle earth onto his coffin. We sing hymns and pastor prays. I stare into the deep rectangle of earth carved into the ground, where at the bottom, in a box, my father's body will remain forever. Auntie Mabel sings a Ghanaian burial song, and then we watch the grave being filled. I rest my head on James's shoulder, my cheeks hard and dried. He pulls me into a side hug. He smells expensive, not of heavy aftershave, but light and reminiscent of gummy sweets. Sorry I was never there, Mads. He sniffs, and when I look up, he's crying. After what you said the other day in the kitchen, I see what we did to you. I don't even know what to say. He nods towards Dad. And there's nothing I can do for him now either. I missed all my chances. I could say something soothing, but I don't have anything to offer. Dad's gone, and the chance to help him has gone with him. I could say it's fine, and that it no longer matters, but that won't negate how much it did matter at the time. I decide not to say anything at all. When the grave is filled, we put our flowers on top. James lifts the heavy ones and won't leave until they're all positioned well on the uneven ground. I'm the last in the line to leave, and I turn round for one more look at the mound of flower-adorned earth. Bye, Dad, I say. I love you, okay?
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Although she's been turned down for the Caro Book mentorship, Maddie is feeling more confident at work. And in this final episode of Maame by Jessica George, there's more good news for her. When I walk into the office, rough samples of love stories sit on my desk with a note. Make sure Chris approves these today. I pull the note aside to read the proposed cover. Love stories from the Middle East. Afra Yazdan Blake and Co. And Co. They took my et al. Suggestion seriously. I leave the samples there and knock on Penny's door. When she says come in, I close the door behind me. I stand in front of her desk until she looks at me. Is everything all right, Maddie? I'd like to take on more responsibility here, I blurt out. I wasted a lot of time at my old job because I didn't feel I had anything to contribute, but clearly I do as an editorial assistant. I may not understand why exactly you changed cooking combos to flavour pairings and changed et al. To Afra and Co., but those ideas did come from me. Penny's jaw is locked, but at least I have her attention. Afra is getting a lot of attention online, I continue, and I brought her here. I'm just... Maddie, Penny interrupts. It may have been your ideas, but it is us who employ you and us who put the resources behind those ideas. It isn't just you here. That's not what I'm saying. I don't know what I thought walking in here. I think about apologising when she asks. Then what are you saying, Maddie? I'm asking to learn, I answer. Penny suddenly takes her glasses off and pinches the bridge of her nose. I think about leaving again when she says, "What is it you want, Maddie?" "A seat at the table." She raises her eyebrows and a smile fights the corner of her mouth. "Sorry," I say. "I was watching Mad Men last night and that sounded cooler in my head." Penny gently throws her head back and laughs. "What I meant is, I'd like to be involved in the creative meetings. The meetings I make tea for." "We still need tea, Maddie." As I'm about to respond, she holds her hand up. "I know." She sighs and gets up from behind her desk. "I'm sorry." I breathe out. "You are?" "Yes," she says. "I am. You're right. You have good ideas, fresh ones. You're innovative and assertive. When I was an editorial assistant, I didn't have the courage to ask my manager for what I wanted. And I should have." She folds her arms. "I consider you an asset, Maddie," she says. "It's not a bad thing to recognise that. So yes, you can join the creative meetings. I still expect you to get your admin tasks done, however." She turns back to her computer. In the afternoon, Penny exits her office and the editors gather around. The senior team are meeting with an illustrator, I think her name is Charlotte, in one of the conference rooms. From what I understand, Charlotte blew up overnight because of a set of illustrations she did for a restaurant's website, and now food writers want her drawings in their books instead of photographs. "Now," Penny says, "we found out from the agent that the primary reason we're being considered is because they found out we pay our illustrators of colour the same standard rate as our white illustrators. Apparently that's not the case elsewhere. Now, Maddie, bearing in mind you will be one of only 2 people of colour in this meeting of 11, and I have no intention of parading you around to prove some kind of point, do you want to attend? It's up to you." I think there's a contradiction somewhere in what she said, but I don't really have time to think it through when half the office is staring at me. Penny smiles and asks, "In other words, would you like to sit at the table?" "Yes." The Griffiths room is the largest meeting room in the building, with shelves of books and large bay windows, and is often reserved for the most important meetings. I straighten my trousers and pull my top from where it's sticking. We walk in and Penny says, "Charlotte, Sam, it's lovely to finally meet you." I look around and it's my Sam. I mean, Joe's Sam. He's not as surprised as I am. "Hello, Maddie." "Sam?" I step towards him. Penny looks at us. "The 2 of you know each other?" "We've met once or twice before," Sam says. I just nod. "Well, Maddie, since you already know Sam, this is Charlotte, his agent," Penny says. "Please take a seat, everyone. Rosie will take our drink request, if you have any." I take the seat Penny gestures towards and diligently take notes as Rob from marketing and Sadie from sales lead the meeting. I sneak glances at Sam, and my pen slips on the page whenever he catches me. He's very good looking. But then I think of what Shu said concerning my funky taste in men. Maybe he's only good looking to me. Then I catch both Sadie and Thea staring at Sam's lips whilst he talks. Maybe not. Mr. Acker, Dad's solicitor, is a tall man with greying hair, oval glasses and a dark suit. I've never seen him before in my life. He offers his condolences and takes a seat on the sofa opposite where Mum sits. James is sat at the dining table. I've chosen to remain by the door. I didn't even know Dad had a lawyer or had written a will. "You didn't?" Mr. Acker says. "No, I don't think he has anything." He invested some money a decade ago, and it's been growing in interest since. Mum sits up straighter. You'll be splitting that with us, James says quickly. Will I? Maddie will get a little bit, of course. She has spent a lot of money on this family, but I'll need the rest. I need financial help in Ghana, Mum says. James's jaw locks. What? She says, looking at us in turn. It is only money. You both should not be so attached to this earth's material things. Matthew 6, verse 19. Mum turns back to Mr. Acker. So, how much is there? He looks at me. Can I confirm your name is Madeline Wright, and you are the daughter of George Wright? My tongue feels dry. Yes, I am. Good, good. What's going on with the money then? Mum asks. Mr. Acker looks at her over the top of his oval glasses. He's left it all to Madeline. £50,000. The room begins to spin and both Mum and James look at me. What? Mum says. All of it? Yes, all of it, he answers. Your father was adamant it was left solely in your name, he says. I chose not to ask any questions, and I suspect you all know why he might have done this better than I do. Mr. Acker removes his glasses. Madeline, you can of course do as you please, but this money is now yours. Your father didn't have anything else. I stand there silent, but hear James say, What's wrong, Mum? I turn and notice she looks blindsided by the news. James, however, is smiling, resting his hand on her shoulder. You're not upset about not getting the money, are you? He says, and his gold tooth glints. After all, you shouldn't be so attached to this earth's material things. Matthew 6, verse 19. Dear Maddie, I hope you're well. I understand you've now been told you weren't selected for the Caro Books mentorship programme. I hope you weren't too disheartened, because I was the literary agent assigned your sample, and I found it to be raw, compelling, and extremely emotive for such a short passage. I did wonder if you'd sent it in its earliest form, because it did feel rushed and incomplete, even for that style of writing. This was mainly why you weren't selected for the programme. However, I think there is something there. Jess, your protagonist, intrigues me, as does her relationship with her father. I'd be happy for you to submit to me when this manuscript is ready. All the best, Eloise Forrester. We didn't get to choose where in the cemetery Dad was buried, but he's under the branches of the largest tree. So although I don't always recognise my path, I always recognise that tree. I jog when I get closer and kneel when I reach him. Hi, Dad. I pull out some weeds and brush away loose rubble. I'm used to the insects now. It's just me today. Sam says hi. He wanted to come, but he needs to finish off artwork samples, and I told him he doesn't have to come with me all the time. It's a little windy, but the sun is out, so I pull a small blanket from my bag and sit on the grass. He's a good egg, isn't he? That means a good person, by the way. I don't know how familiar you were with British idioms. I don't know where that phrase derives, actually. I might Google it later. Work's good, I continue. Penny tells me I'm 4 to 6 months away from making assistant editor if I stay on track. I'm also writing something about you. I pull out my printed 971 words and Eloise's email. I don't know why I brought this with me, I say, waving the papers. Just wanted to show you. Anyway, I drafted the first 3 chapters and Eloise wants the entire thing now, so I'm kind of making us into a book. Nothing's been promised and maybe nothing will happen. But it would be nice, wouldn't it? To immortalise you here somehow. I shrug and return the pages to my bag. It's probably nothing, but worth trying, right? Mum said I don't need to keep visiting Dad's grave, except to tidy it and lay flowers out of respect. If you want to speak to him, she said, then you look up. You must speak to his soul, not his empty body. This I can agree with, but if I'm here anyway, I like to sit and talk to Dad about a lot of things. Sam took me to a really nice restaurant the other night where I had the best risotto and apple tart I've ever had. She spent the weekend with me and Nia. James is currently in Manchester, but we spoke on the phone this morning. He likes to call even if he hasn't got much to say. Mum's flight back to Ghana is coming up, and I've booked to go with her for 3 weeks. I'll spend 2 in Accra and 1 in Kumasi. It'll be nice to see where you both grew up. Mum calls at that very moment. I'll call her back. She also calls me a lot now, usually after I've been to therapy to ask what I spoke about. She doesn't agree with everything. Always childhood. Is no mother safe from criticism? But she doesn't disagree with everything either. And that's something. She's also started talking to me about Grandad and her childhood. Of course, Ghana was more challenging than the UK because she had to walk hundreds of miles to school in sandals, through jungles with tigers roaming and snakes in the trees, apparently. I roll my eyes. But she listens, and that's new. I can tell when she's biting her tongue, and sometimes she can't help herself. But that's fine. Baby steps. Oh, now she sent a text. I read it out loud. Do you think Sam will propose soon? Does he know he needs my blessing? I will give him my blessing, but still, he must ask. After a while, I say, Dad, I should go. Sam's mum's coming round for lunch, and she prefers it when everything is homemade, so I need time to reheat and convincingly plate the food Mum made. I pull my knees to my chin and look at Dad's headstone a little longer before getting to my feet. See you soon, okay? The sun gleams against his marble headstone and throws a strip of light onto my face. I laugh and look up to a patch of blue sky. Subtle, Dad, I tell him, squinting into the sun. Really subtle. Maame by Jessica George was read by me, Claire Hope Ashity. The abridger is Rowan Routh, and the producer is Nicola Holloway. Maame is a BBC Books production for BBC Sounds.